So this is where you enjoy the beer?
My pride of joy, the bar. Historically, everyone used to work, when it came to water profiles, they brewed certain styles of beer around the world because that was the water they had. And just through trial and error, they discovered, well, if I put these dark grains together, blah, 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 like Ireland, they made stout. It just happened that a certain water profile made the right characteristics in the beer. When they tried to make pale Pilsner beers in Ireland, it just tasted horrible because they had really hard water, high alkalinity, and it just didn't work for those pale malts.
Whereas so it's just the origins of the land, really?
Yeah. So now I used the calculations. I'm going to add a certain amount of water and grain together, which will give me 55 degrees Celsius. And I want to add those minerals because basically, without going into it too much, you want to mix the water and the grain together so you get a certain pH in your mash. So dark grains will be more acidic, paler grains will be a little bit more alkaline. So you just want to blend them together, and different combinations will produce different pHs. It's quite complicated. So that's why we add the certain mineral profile and everything to try and reach an ideal pH of about 5.2 to 5.4. After my little hissy fit before, I just stuffed up completely because I put too much water in because I was trying to do too many things at one time. That's the problem with brewing. You're so busy doing bits and bobs, you try and do two things at once, you fuck it up, and then you just cost yourself another half an hour. So if you look down in the grain, you'll see basically what's malt flour. So this is all the starch, like any other flour, which has been basically isolated in the grain during the malting process. And all we're doing is converting that starch, which is floury, cloudy starch, which is pointless in beer, into sugar.
So how do you get different alcohol levels?
Well, different alcohol levels depends on the amount of sugar you put in and the types of sugar. So you want dextrins for body, which makes the beer have some mouthfeel. And you want maltose, which is simpler sugars, which are like the more reduced ends of glucose, which give you more fermentable sugars. And so the more grain, basically, the more sugar, and therefore the more alcohol. So this is the hot water supply. This hot water supply here, or the hot liquor tank, supplies all the hot water to the system. I've got my control board here, which will control the temperature of both the hot liquor tank and all the other elements of the brewery. So this is heated up to whatever temperature I require. So it's basically just a hot water system. That can then pump hot water system into this, which is called the mash tun. This is sort of the business end. This is where basically I add all the grain and all the water, like I was saying earlier, to the right temperature. That'll be mixed together for an hour, which will extract, it'll convert the starches in the grains to sugar. And then we will then use the grain bed, which is sitting in there, as basically a natural filter system, and extract all that liquid out through the grain, leaving the grain behind and pumping the sugar extract into this, which is the boiler kettle. And this is where we boil it for an hour with hops, which gives you your bitterness and your flavour and aroma. Boil it for an hour, and then after an hour we cool it down to yeast temperature, or pitching temperature, to about 16 degrees Celsius using this. So this is what's called an immersion chiller. This will sit in the solution and chill down the solution to whatever temperature I want, just by pumping water through it. And it's just a chiller coil basically. To get it down cold enough, because obviously our tap water isn't cold enough to get it right down to 16, I'll do the last little bit with ice water, just pumping it through this. And you can see there's a bent bit of copper coil in there, it's called a whirlpool. So that just speeds up the process by pumping the fluid against the coils. And what it'll also do is create a whirlpool, so all the trub and hop and all the protein crap which you don't want to go into the fermenter will then settle down to the bottom. And then I can rack off the clean wort, or unfermented beer is what it's called, into the fermenter, where I can then add yeast and then turn it into beer. I was just saying what an absolute madman I am, because I've really launched into this thing head first. I really don't know a great deal at all about this technical process or electrical engineering. I basically build this on the basis of shit that I've just looked up on the internet.
It'll be ready for the camping trip?
Yes, it will be. It will be.
And it'll be nice.
3 weeks, actually. 3 weeks.
Nice and tasty?
Yeah, and that's the other reason why I'm doing the ale, by the way, because it doesn't have to mature as long, so... Although, the real hardcore beer brewers would probably put this down for several months and not touch it, but for me, I should have it filtered and ready to drink by camping, so we're right in that, mate. Exactly what we want. Now, if the pH is too high, being alkaline, what you do is you, like stale tea, you tend to extract some unwanted sort of tannins and off flavours from the grain, which you don't want. So I'm just got the kegs of beer, which are just aging at the moment. They've got one of them's a German beer, which is a Doppelbock, which sort of needs to age for about 3 to 6 months. So I'll put that down. The other one's pretty much ready to drink. And here I've got the yeast, that's a yeast starter, which we're going to need for today's beer. So that'll break down, it'll decide what flavours it leaves, what sugars it prefers, the style of the beer. So whether you can make a beer with exactly the same malt and everything, same grain, same everything, and put 4 different types of yeast in that solution, and you'll get 4 entirely different types of beer. So the yeast is everything.
So we're all finished now and ready for camping?
Yeah, ready for camping. And we've just got to put these, this is just almost at pitching temperature, so I'll be putting the yeasts in the fermenters and putting them in my lovely temperature controlled environment for the next 2 weeks, where they'll be nurtured and cared for by myself.
Do you think if you look into it long enough you can see the future?
Yep, I can see my wife divorcing me there. The aggravation as I kick the keg when it tastes like shit on the camping trip. And that's me going down to the bottle shop to buy what I should have done anyway in the first place. And that's me having all this stuff melted down to liquid steel just to watch it suffer as much as I suffer trying to get this stupid thing to work. And and that's me begging my wife to take me back after and showing her the photo of the